I pulled into Dad's driveway Christmas morning, excited to surprise everyone by arriving early with homemade cookies and carefully wrapped presents. After driving 4 hours from Denver, I couldn't wait to see the family I'd missed all year. But when I rang the doorbell, Dad's voice boomed through the wood. "Go away, your stepmother doesn't want you here. Only important people today." My stomach dropped as I heard Diane's laughter echoing behind him. 28 years of Christmas mornings, and suddenly I wasn't important enough for my own father's table. Standing there on Dad's front porch, clutching my homemade sugar cookies that suddenly felt meaningless in my hands, I couldn't process what had just happened. The red door with the holly wreath I'd helped Mom pick out 15 years ago remained firmly shut. Through the frosted glass panels, I could see shadows moving around, could hear the warm chatter of conversation and clinking of silverware that should have included me. My phone buzzed with a text notification. Without thinking, I opened Facebook, maybe hoping to distract myself from the crushing rejection. But what I saw there made my blood turn to ice water in my veins. Diane had posted a photo just 2 hours earlier. "Perfect Christmas morning with my real family." The caption read, accompanied by a series of heart emojis. In the picture, she stood beaming next to Dad, who looked thinner than I remembered, almost gaunt. But what made me drop my phone was seeing Jessica Diane's 25-year-old daughter wearing my grandmother's vintage emerald Christmas dress. That dress had been in our family for 3 generations. Mom had worn it to Christmas dinner every year until she passed away 6 years ago. Before she died, she'd specifically told me it would be mine when I got married. Now Jessica was parading around in it like it belonged to her. I scrolled through more of Diane's recent posts with trembling fingers. Photo after photo showed a curated version of my father's life that I barely recognized. Finally having the Christmas I always dreamed of, read one from last week. No drama, no ungrateful children demanding handouts, just pure family love. Ungrateful children demanding handouts. I hadn't asked Dad for money since college. I worked as a marketing director at a successful firm in Denver, owned my own condo, and paid my own bills. What handouts was she talking about? Another post from Thanksgiving showed Jessica and Diane cooking in Mom's kitchen using Mom's special serving dishes. "Teaching my daughter the family recipes," Diane had written. Those weren't her family recipes. Those were Mom's recipes passed down from my great-grandmother. I kept scrolling, my heart pounding harder with each image. There was Dad teaching Jessica how to use his fishing rod at what looked like our family cabin in Estes Park. There was Jessica wearing Mom's pearl necklace at what appeared to be a fancy restaurant dinner. Every photo seemed designed to replace me and my brother Tyler with Diane's daughter. Then I found the post that made everything click into place. From 3 months ago, some people think they can waltz back into your life after years of neglect and expect everything handed to them. Real family sticks around through the tough times. Grateful my husband finally sees who truly cares about him. Years of neglect, I called Dad every Sunday. I visited at least once a month despite the 4-hour drive. I'd been the one coordinating his medical appointments after his mild heart attack 2 years ago. What was Diane talking about? My phone rang, making me jump. Tyler's name appeared on the screen. "Mayra, please tell me you're not at Dad's house." My brother's voice was strained. "I'm sitting in his driveway. He just told me Diane doesn't want me here and only important people are welcome today." The words came out bitter and hollow. Tyler was quiet for a long moment. "Did Dad kick you out too? I've been banned from the house for 3 months. 3 months. Tyler, what are you talking about? Dad never mentioned anything about you being banned." That's because Diane told him I was spreading lies about her. She claimed I was trying to turn him against her and that I was only interested in his money. Dad actually accused me of trying to steal from him Mayra. Our own father thinks I'm a thief. I felt dizzy. None of this made sense. Tyler was a high school teacher in Colorado Springs. He'd never asked Dad for anything except to borrow tools occasionally. "What kind of lies did she say you were spreading?" I made the mistake of asking Dad why he seemed different lately. Why he wasn't returning my calls, why he'd canceled our monthly fishing trips, why he seemed confused about things we'd talked about. Diane apparently told him I was questioning his mental capacity and trying to manipulate him. The pieces started falling into place. Those strange phone conversations over the past 6 months where Dad seemed distant and cold. The way he'd forget plans we'd made or conversations we'd had. The gradual reduction in our contact, from daily check-ins to weekly calls to almost nothing. Tyler, I think she's been working on this for months. Look at her Facebook posts. She's been painting us as ungrateful, money-hungry kids who abandoned Dad. I know, I've seen them. She's even got Dad believing that Mom would want him to move on and prioritize his new family. She keeps posting these passive-aggressive messages about people who can't let go of the past and how some children never grow up. I scrolled back through Diane's posts, seeing them now with fresh eyes. Every holiday, every family milestone, every important moment had been systematically rewritten to center herself and Jessica, while painting Tyler and me as absent, selfish, or problematic. There's something else, Mayra. Tyler's voice dropped to almost a whisper. I overheard something when I went to pick up my tools last month. Dad didn't know I was there. I heard him on the phone with someone talking about liquidating mountain property. I think she's trying to get him to sell the cabin. The cabin. Our mother's sanctuary, the place where she'd taught us to fish and hike, where we'd spent every summer of our childhood. The place where Dad had proposed to Mom under the old pine tree by the lake. Diane wanted to sell that too. We can't let that happen, Tyler. I don't know what we can do. Dad won't talk to me, and apparently he won't talk to you either. She's got him completely under her control. As I sat there in Dad's driveway watching the warm glow from the windows of the house where I'd grown up, I realized this wasn't just about Christmas dinner. This was about Diane systematically erasing our family's history and replacing it with her own version, and somehow she'd convinced our father to help her do it. My phone lit up with an incoming call. Dad's name appeared on the screen. I stared at Dad's name on my phone screen, my thumb hovering over the answer button. Tyler was still on the line, and I could hear his sharp intake of breath. "Answer it," he whispered. "Put it on speaker. I want to hear what he says." I accepted the call and immediately switched to speakerphone. "Hi, Dad." "Mayra." His voice sounded strange, almost mechanical. "I need you to return your key to the cabin." My heart stopped. The cabin key. I'd had it since I was 16 when Dad first trusted me to take friends there for weekend trips. It was more than just a piece of metal. It represented his faith in me, my connection to our family history, my inheritance from Mom. "Why do you need the key back, Dad?" "For security reasons. The property needs to be properly maintained, and we can't have extra keys floating around." Tyler frowned and shook his head vigorously. Dad had never cared about security before. We'd always shared keys, freely trusting each other completely. This language didn't sound like him at all. "Dad, I've been helping maintain the cabin for years. Remember when I fixed the deck railing last summer, and when I had the roof inspected after that hailstorm?" There was a pause, and I could hear muffled voices in the background. "That's not the point. Things are different now. I need all the keys accounted for." "Different how?" Another pause. More background whispers. "Just drop it off this week. Leave it in the mailbox if nobody's home." The line went dead. Tyler and I sat in stunned silence. The dad who had just hung up on me wasn't the man who'd taught me to tie fishing flies and shown me how to start a campfire. This was someone else entirely. "I'm coming to Denver," Tyler said firmly. "We need to figure out what's really going on." An hour later, we sat across from each other at a small coffee shop near my apartment, both nursing oversized mugs of coffee that had gone cold while we compared notes about Dad's increasingly strange behavior. "When did you first notice the change?" I asked Tyler. "It was gradual. Maybe 8 months ago, he started canceling our fishing trips. Said he was too busy, had too many commitments. Then he stopped returning my calls as quickly. When I'd finally reach him, he seemed distracted, like he was reading from a script." I nodded. "Same here. And he started forgetting conversations we'd had. Last month, I reminded him about Mom's birthday, and he acted like he had no idea what I was talking about. Dad never forgets Mom's birthday. Tyler pulled out his laptop and opened a browser window. I've been doing some research. After that phone call last month about liquidating mountain property, I decided to look into the cabin's legal status. He typed in the Jefferson County Assessor's website and pulled up property records. What we saw made my stomach drop. Look at this. 3 months ago, Dad added Diane's name to the deed. She now owns half of Mom's cabin. I grabbed the laptop, staring at the official document. There it was in black and white, Diane Martinez Sullivan, listed as joint owner of the property Mom had inherited from her parents. "He can't do that," I whispered. "Mom specifically told us the cabin was supposed to stay in the family. She made him promise." Tyler opened another tab and started searching. I found something else. Diane's daughter Jessica is getting married next spring. Look at this wedding planning website. They're budgeting $150,000 for the wedding. $150,000. Where would she get that kind of money? That's what I'm afraid to find out. Tyler turned the laptop toward me, showing Jessica's wedding registry. Designer Everything, a destination wedding in Napa Valley, a guest list of over 200 people. The math was starting to add up in the most sickening way possible. Diane had systematically isolated Dad from his children, convinced him we were ungrateful and money-hungry, then positioned herself to inherit or control his most valuable assets. The cabin alone was worth at least $300,000, given its prime location and the current mountain real estate market. "Tyler, we need to see the cabin. If she's planning to sell it, there might be signs, appraisal notices, realtor visits, maintenance work to increase its value." We decided to drive up to Estes Park the next morning. I had a spare key that Dad didn't know about. Mom had given it to me years ago and told me to keep it secret, just in case. I'd never imagined just in case would mean protecting our family heritage from Dad's new wife. The drive up to the mountains felt surreal. Every twist of the familiar road brought back memories of childhood trips, of Mom pointing out wildlife, of Dad singing off-key to classic rock songs on the radio. Now we were making the same journey to investigate whether our stepmother was stealing our inheritance. When we arrived at the cabin, everything looked normal at first glance. The log structure sat peacefully beside the lake, surrounded by towering pine trees and backed by snow-capped peaks. But as we got closer, Tyler spotted something that made us both freeze. "There's a lockbox on the door." Sure enough, a realtor's lockbox hung from the door handle, the kind used for showing properties to potential buyers. With shaking hands, I used Mom's secret key to unlock the door. Inside, the cabin had been transformed. All of Mom's personal belongings were gone, her collection of vintage fishing lures, the photo albums she'd kept in the living room, the handmade quilts that had covered the beds for 30 years. The space felt sterile, staged like a showroom rather than a family retreat. On the kitchen counter, we found a stack of real estate brochures with the cabin's photos prominently featured. "Mountain Paradise, perfect for your dream wedding," read the headline. Tyler picked up another document from the pile, a purchase agreement with a deposit check already attached. Someone had made an offer on our family cabin, and according to the paperwork, the sale was scheduled to close in 6 weeks. "Mayra, look at this." Tyler's voice was hollow. He handed me a letter from Dad's bank addressed to the cabin. It was a notice about a substantial withdrawal from his retirement account, $75,000 withdrawn just 2 weeks ago. My hands shook as I processed what we'd discovered. Diane wasn't just planning to sell the cabin. She'd already found a buyer, already started accessing Dad's retirement money, and was systematically liquidating everything Mom had left to us. As we drove back to Denver in heavy silence, my phone rang again. Dad's name appeared on the screen. I glanced at Tyler, who nodded grimly. This time I answered on the first ring, immediately putting the call on speaker. "Hello, Dad." "Mayra, you still haven't brought me that cabin key." His voice had that same mechanical quality from yesterday, like he was reading from a prepared script. "Dad, we need to talk." Tyler and I went up to the cabin today. Dead silence on the other end. Then very quietly, I heard a woman's voice in the background. Tell her she's not responsible enough to have access to valuable property. My blood ran cold. Diane was coaching him, feeding him lines like he was her puppet. You're not responsible enough to have access to valuable property, Dad repeated word for word. Tyler grabbed my arm, his eyes wide with disbelief. Our father, the man who taught us about integrity and thinking for ourselves, was literally being told what to say by his wife. Dad, those are not your words. Why don't you tell me how you really feel? Another pause. More whispering. I feel that you and Tyler have been disrespectful to Diane, and she deserves to feel secure in her own home. Her own home, Dad, that cabin was Mom's family property. You promised her it would stay in our family forever. Your mother is gone, Mayra. It's time to focus on the family I have now. The words hit me like a physical blow. Tyler's face had gone pale, and I could see his hands clenching into fists. But then something strange happened. I heard Dad make a small, confused sound, almost like he was waking up from a dream. Wait, what did I just say, Mayra, honey? Tell her she's being manipulative. Diane's voice cut through louder, now more urgent. Tell her she's trying to guilt trip you. I'm not trying to guilt trip anyone, Dad. I'm trying to understand why you think Tyler and I have been disrespectful. Can you give me a specific example? Silence. Long-telling silence. Dad, can you tell me one specific thing Tyler or I did to disrespect Diane? More whispering in the background, but this time I could make out some of Diane's words. The birthday thing. The Mother's Day thing. Tell her about the calls. Dad, are you there? Yes, I'm here. His voice sounded different now, less certain. Diane says you haven't been calling me. Dad, I call you every Sunday. We talked last Sunday about your doctor's appointment, and the Sunday before that, you told me about fixing your neighbor's fence. I don't remember that. Tyler leaned toward the phone. Dad, it's Tyler. Do you remember when I called you last month about Mom's birthday? I wanted to bring flowers to her grave, and you said you'd meet me there. Tyler. Dad's voice cracked slightly. Son, I thought you weren't speaking to me. Diane said you'd told people I was losing my mind. Dad, I never said anything like that to anyone. I was worried about you because you seemed confused during our last few conversations, but I would never say you were losing your mind. The background whispering became more frantic. I could hear Diane saying something about manipulation tactics and playing victim. But Dad's voice was changing, becoming more like the father I remembered. Kids, I'm so confused. Diane shows me these text messages where you're both saying terrible things about her, but I don't understand why you'd send me things like that. Tyler and I exchanged glances. Dad, what text messages? Can you read one to us? Let me find one. Here. This is from Tyler's number last month. Dad, your wife is a gold-digging witch, and you're an idiot for falling for her act. Tyler went white. Dad, I never sent that text. I would never call you an idiot, and I would never use that kind of language about Diane. But it came from your number. Dad, someone can fake text messages. They can make it look like they came from our numbers when they didn't. Have you been getting similar messages that appear to be from me? Yes, there have been several. And emails too, saying you both think I'm senile and that you're just waiting for me to die so you can inherit everything. I felt sick. Dad, we never sent any messages like that. Someone has been faking communications from us to make you think we don't love you. The whispering in the background became urgent shouting, though I couldn't make out the specific words. Girls, I need to go. Diane is upset and... The line went dead, but not before I heard Diane's voice clearly. Robert, give me that phone right now. Tyler and I sat staring at each other in my car, both of us shaking. She's been intercepting our communications and sending fake messages to make Dad think we hate him, I said slowly. And she's been coaching him on what to say to us during phone calls. Tyler ran his hands through his hair. Mayra, this isn't just manipulation. This is elder abuse. I thought about Dad's confused voice, the way he'd seemed to wake up during our conversation. His genuine shock at learning Tyler had never sent those horrible text messages. Tyler, What if she's doing more than just controlling his communications? What if she's doing something to affect his thinking? He seemed so much more like himself toward the end of that call. We sat in silence for a moment, both processing the implications of what we'd discovered. "We can't handle this alone," Tyler said finally. "We need help. Legal help, maybe medical help. Dad is in trouble, and we might be the only ones who can save him." I took a deep breath, feeling a surge of determination replace the helplessness I'd been carrying. When Dad called again, and I was certain he would, I was going to be ready. And I already knew exactly what I was going to say. The next morning, Tyler and I sat in the law office of Patricia Reynolds' mom's former attorney. Patricia was in her 60s, with silver hair and kind eyes that had seen too many family disputes over the years. When I'd called her the night before and briefly explained the situation, she'd agreed to see us first thing Monday morning. "Your mother was very specific about protecting family assets," Patricia said, pulling out a thick file folder. "She was concerned about what might happen if your father remarried, which is why we included several protective clauses in her will." She opened the folder and withdrew a document I'd never seen before. "This is a codicil to your mother's will specifically regarding the cabin property. Your father may have forgotten about this, but legally he cannot sell or transfer ownership of the cabin without written consent from both of you." Tyler and I leaned forward, reading over the legal language. There it was in black and white. "The Estes Park property shall remain in trust for the benefit of Sarah's children and their descendants. Any transfer, sale, or change of ownership requires unanimous written consent from all living beneficiaries." "But Dad added Diane's name to the deed 3 months ago," I said. "We saw it on the county records." Patricia frowned, pulling out another document. "Let me check something." She typed into her computer, accessing the same county records we'd found. Her frown deepened as she read. "This deed transfer is legally invalid. Your father did not have the authority to add anyone to this deed without your consent. The fact that this was processed means either the county made an error or someone provided fraudulent documentation." She picked up her phone and dialed the county clerk's office. After a brief conversation, she hung up and turned back to us with a grim expression. "The deed transfer was processed using a forged power of attorney document that supposedly gave your father full authority over all marital assets. Someone also provided a notarized statement claiming that both of you had waived your inheritance rights." Tyler slammed his hand on the desk. "We never waived anything. We never even knew about this." "I know. Which means we're looking at multiple felonies here, forgery, fraud, and possibly elder abuse." Patricia pulled out a legal pad and started taking notes. "Tell me everything you've observed about your father's behavior and mental state over the past year." We spent the next hour detailing Dad's personality changes, the fake text messages, his confusion during phone calls, and his apparent memory problems. Patricia listened carefully, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "Have you noticed any changes in his physical health? Weight loss changes in sleep patterns? Unusual fatigue?" I thought back to seeing Dad at Christmas, how gaunt he'd looked in Diane's photos. He's lost weight, and in that phone call yesterday, he seemed confused about conversations we'd had, like he genuinely couldn't remember them. Patricia made more notes. "I'm going to give you the contact information for Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a geriatrician who specializes in cases involving elder abuse. She can help determine if your father is being given any medications or substances that might affect his memory or decision-making ability." The implications hit me like a truck. "You think she's been drugging him?" "I think we need to consider all possibilities. Financial elder abuse often involves methods to keep the victim compliant and confused. Over-medication is unfortunately common." Patricia continued reviewing the legal documents, her expression growing more serious by the minute. "There's more. According to these bank records you brought, your father has had over $100,000 withdrawn from his retirement accounts in the past 6 months. The withdrawals were all made with Diane's signature on withdrawal slips." Tyler grabbed the bank statements we'd brought. "She's been draining his savings account." "It gets worse." Patricia said, pointing to a credit report she'd pulled up on her computer. 3 credit cards have been opened in your father's name in the past 4 months. The balances total nearly $40,000, and all the charges appear to be for wedding expenses, luxury items, and travel. And I felt dizzy looking at the evidence spread across Patricia's desk. This wasn't just about inheriting the cabin or even the money. Diane had been systematically destroying Dad's financial security while isolating him from anyone who might notice or object. "What can we do?" I asked. Patricia was quiet for a long moment, then looked up with determination in her eyes. "We're going to stop her. But we need to move quickly. If she realizes you're onto her scheme, she might accelerate the timeline or try to cover her tracks." She outlined our legal options: filing for emergency guardianship to protect Dad's interests, reporting the financial crimes to both local police and the district attorney's elder abuse unit, and getting a court order to freeze all of Dad's accounts until the investigation was complete. But first, we need to document everything properly. I want you both to write down every interaction you've had with your father and Diane over the past year. Every strange conversation, every canceled plan, every time something didn't feel right. We need to build a timeline that shows the pattern of abuse and manipulation. As we prepared to leave, Patricia handed me a business card for Dr. Rodriguez and another for Detective Maria Santos, who specialized in financial crimes against the elderly. "There's one more thing," Patricia said. "Christmas is in 3 days. Diane is clearly planning something significant, possibly finalizing the cabin sale or making additional major financial moves before the new year. If we're going to intervene, it needs to be soon." Walking out of Patricia's office, I felt a mixture of hope and urgency. We finally had proof that what was happening to Dad was illegal, and we had legal professionals willing to help us stop it. But we were racing against time. Tyler and I spent the rest of the day meeting with Dr. Rodriguez and Detective Santos, building our case and preparing for what Patricia warned us would be a difficult confrontation. "Your father may not believe you at first," Dr. Rodriguez had explained. "Victims of this kind of manipulation often defend their abusers, especially if medications are involved that affect their thinking. But once we remove him from the toxic environment and allow his system to clear, his natural judgment should return." By evening, we had a plan. Tomorrow, we would return to Dad's house, not to argue or accuse, but to present evidence and offer help. We'd have legal documents, medical professionals, and law enforcement support. But I knew the most important part of our plan was something no attorney or doctor could provide. We had to reach the father. We remembered the man who had taught us to stand up for what was right, even when it was difficult. As I lay in bed that night, I practiced the words I would say to Dad when we saw him again. 6 words that would cut through Diane's manipulation and reach the man I knew was still there, somewhere beneath the confusion and false programming. 6 words that would change everything. Christmas morning felt surreal as Tyler and I drove back toward Dad's house, this time with Patricia Reynolds, following in her car along with Dr. Elena Rodriguez and Detective Maria Santos. We'd planned everything carefully arrive during the peak of Diane's Christmas celebration, when all her family would be present, making it harder for her to control the narrative or hide the evidence. As we pulled up to the house, I could see multiple cars in the driveway and hear the sounds of a party in full swing. Through the large front window, I counted at least 12 people gathered around the dining room table, Diane's extended family, enjoying their elaborate Christmas feast funded by my father's stolen money. Patricia parked behind us and walked over carrying a briefcase full of legal documents. Dr. Rodriguez, a kind-looking woman in her 50s, joined us along with Detective Santos, who wore a professional but compassionate expression. "Remember," Patricia said quietly, "we're here to help your father, not to attack anyone. Let the evidence speak for itself." Tyler rang the doorbell. After a moment, Diane opened the door, her face immediately shifting from festive cheer to cold hostility when she saw us. "What are you doing here? I told you yesterday that you're not welcome in this house." "We're here to see our father," I said calmly, "and we've brought some people who need to speak with him about urgent legal matters." Diane's eyes darted nervously between Patricia's professional attire and Detective Santos's badge, which was clearly visible on her jacket. "This is harassment," Diane said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Robert is enjoying Christmas dinner with his real family." From inside the house, I heard Dad's voice. "Who's at the door, honey?" "Nobody important," Diane called back. "Just some people trying to sell something." But Dad appeared behind her, and when he saw Tyler and me, his face lit up with genuine surprise and what looked like relief. "Mayra, Tyler. What are you doing here?" I thought. "Diane said you both were spending Christmas elsewhere." Detective Santos stepped forward and showed her badge. "Mr. Sullivan, I'm Detective Santos with the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office. We need to speak with you about some financial irregularities regarding your accounts and property. May we come in?" Dad looked confused, glancing between Diane and the detective. "Financial irregularities? I don't understand." Diane's face had gone pale, but she quickly recovered. "Robert, these people are trying to cause trouble. It's Christmas Day. This can wait." "Actually, it can't wait," Patricia said firmly. "Mr. Sullivan, I'm Patricia Reynolds, your late wife's attorney. I have some documents that require your immediate attention." The mention of Mom seemed to cut through Dad's confusion. "Patricia, I remember you. You handled Sarah's will." "That's right. And there have been some illegal actions taken regarding Sarah's estate that we need to discuss immediately." By now, Diane's family members had gathered in the entryway, sensing the tension. I recognized Jessica still wearing my grandmother's Christmas dress, along with several other people I'd never met. "What's going on?" asked an older woman who looked like Diane's mother. Patricia opened her briefcase and withdrew the legal documents we'd prepared. "Mr. Sullivan, 3 months ago, someone used forged documents to add your wife Diane's name to the deed of your Estes Park cabin. This action was illegal because your late wife's will specifically prevents any transfer of that property without written consent from your children." Dad's face went blank. "Forged documents I don't understand." Detective Santos pulled out her notebook. "Mr. Sullivan, we also have evidence of unauthorized withdrawals from your retirement accounts totaling over $100,000, as well as credit cards opened in your name without your knowledge." "That's impossible," Dad said, but his voice was shaky. "I would remember signing for credit cards." Diane stepped forward, her composure finally cracking. "Robert, don't listen to them. They're trying to confuse you, trying to take advantage of your grief over Sarah." But Dr. Rodriguez had been quietly observing Dad's physical appearance and behavior. She stepped closer to him, her medical training evident in her focused attention. "Mr. Sullivan, have you been experiencing any memory problems lately? Confusion about recent events, unusual fatigue, or changes in your sleep patterns?" Dad blinked slowly as if trying to focus. Yes, actually, I've been having trouble remembering things. Diane says it's normal at my age that I should start taking the supplements she gives me to help with my memory." "What supplements?" Dr. Rodriguez asked sharply. Diane immediately interjected, "Just standard vitamins, ginkgo biloba, things like that." But Jessica, who had been listening to the conversation with growing alarm, suddenly spoke up. "Mom, those aren't vitamins. I saw the prescription bottles in your purse. They have Mr. Sullivan's name on them, but you're the one who gives them to him every morning." The entire room went silent. Diane's face flushed red as she realized her daughter had just contradicted her lie in front of a police detective and a doctor. "Jessica, you don't know what you're talking about," Diane said desperately. But Dr. Rodriguez was already asking Dad more questions. "Mr. Sullivan, do you remember agreeing to sell your cabin? Do you remember adding your wife's name to the deed?" Dad's face scrunched up in concentration. No, I don't remember any of that. But Diane showed me papers that I had signed. She said I must have forgotten because of my memory problems." Patricia pulled out the forged power of attorney document. "Mr. Sullivan, is this your signature?" Dad studied the paper carefully, then shook his head. "That's not how I sign my name. The R is wrong, and I always print my middle initial." Detective Santos made notes while Patricia documented Dad's statement. The evidence was mounting, and Diane's elaborate scheme was unraveling in front of her own family members. Diane's mother, who had been listening to everything with growing horror, finally spoke up. "Diane, what have you done? This man trusted you." But before Diane could respond, Dad suddenly grabbed his head and swayed on his feet. "I feel dizzy, and my mouth tastes strange like metal." Dr. Rodriguez immediately moved to support him. "Those symptoms are consistent with medication interactions or over-medication. Mr. Sullivan, I think we need to get you to a hospital for blood tests." "He doesn't need a hospital," Diane protested frantically. "He's just overwhelmed by all these accusations." But Tyler had spotted something on the kitchen counter. "Dad, what's in this coffee mug?" He held up a Christmas mug that was sitting next to the coffee maker, pointing to the white residue at the bottom. Dr. Rodriguez took the mug and examined it carefully. "This looks like crushed medication. Someone has been putting drugs in his coffee." The room erupted in shocked voices from Diane's family members. Jessica started crying, and Diane's mother demanded to know what was happening. Detective Santos stepped forward and addressed Diane directly. "Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent, but I need you to step away from Mr. Sullivan while we sort this out." As the chaos unfolded around us, I moved closer to Dad, who was looking more alert and aware than I'd seen him in months. "Dad," I said softly, "we're here to help you. We love you, and we're going to make sure you're safe." For the first time in nearly a year, my father looked directly into my eyes with complete clarity and recognition. "Mayra," he whispered, "I've been so confused. I couldn't understand why you and Tyler stopped loving me." "We never stopped loving you, Dad. Someone was making sure you couldn't hear from us and that we couldn't reach you." As Detective Santos began formally arresting Diane and Dr. Rodriguez called for an ambulance to take Dad for medical evaluation, I finally felt like we were getting our father back. The 6 words I'd planned to say to change everything turned out to be unnecessary. The truth had been powerful enough on its own. The emergency room at Boulder Community Hospital buzzed with controlled activity as Dad underwent a comprehensive medical evaluation. Tyler and I sat in the family waiting area, still processing everything that had happened in the past few hours. Detective Santos had arrested Diane on charges of elder abuse, financial fraud, and forgery, while Jessica had broken down, completely confessing to her knowledge of her mother's scheme. Dr. Rodriguez emerged from the examination room with a mixture of relief and anger on her face. "Your father is going to be fine, but what was done to him was criminal," she said, sitting down across from us. "His blood tests show a cocktail of medications that had no business being in his system. Anti-anxiety medications that cause memory problems and confusion sleep aids that were making him drowsy during the day, and mood stabilizers that were affecting his ability to think clearly." Tyler clenched his fists. She was drugging him to keep him compliant. That's exactly what she was doing. The good news is that once these medications clear his system completely, his cognitive function should return to normal. We're talking about a few days to a week for significant improvement. Dr. Rodriguez continued explaining the medical timeline while nurses continued monitoring Dad's vital signs. The drugs had been building up in his system over months, which explained the gradual deterioration in his personality and decision-making ability. "Can we see him?" I asked. "Yes, but I want to prepare you. As the medications leave his system, he's starting to remember things that the drugs had been suppressing. He's very emotional right now, processing what happened to him." When we entered Dad's room, he was sitting up in bed looking more like himself than he had in months. His eyes were clearer, his posture more alert. But when he saw us, tears began streaming down his face. "Kids, I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I can't believe what I said to you, the things I did." Tyler and I rushed to his bedside. "Dad, none of that was your fault. You were being manipulated and drugged." "But I signed those papers. I added her name to the cabin deed. I told you to stay away on Christmas." His voice broke with emotion. "Dad, Patricia explained everything to us," I said gently. "The signatures were forged. You never actually signed anything. Diane was showing you fake documents to make you think you had agreed to things." Over the next hour, Dad's memories began returning in fragments. He remembered trying to call us but being told by Diane that we weren't answering. He remembered feeling confused when she showed him the cruel text messages, supposedly from Tyler and me. Most heartbreakingly, he remembered questioning his own sanity when his thoughts didn't seem to match what Diane was telling him about reality. "She convinced me that grief over your mother was affecting my judgment," Dad said. "She said I needed to trust her to help me make good decisions because I wasn't thinking clearly." "Dad, your judgment was fine," Tyler assured him. "She was putting drugs in your coffee every morning to make you confused and compliant." Detective Santos arrived to take Dad's formal statement about the financial crimes. As she questioned him gently about the forged documents and unauthorized account access, more pieces of the puzzle fell into place. "I never agreed to sell the cabin," Dad stated firmly. "I would never sell your mother's property without talking to you kids first. That cabin is your inheritance." The detective showed him copies of the financial records Patricia had uncovered. Dad's shock at seeing the extent of Diane's theft was visible and genuine. $100,000. She took $100,000 from my retirement account. His voice rose with disbelief. "I thought I had been having minor memory problems, not that someone was stealing my life savings." Dr. Rodriguez returned to check on Dad's progress and was pleased to see his continued improvement. "Mr. Sullivan, we'd like to keep you here overnight for observation just to make sure your system clears completely and there are no complications." As the evening progressed, more of Dad's friends and neighbors began visiting. Word had spread quickly through their community about what had happened, and the support was overwhelming. Dad's longtime friend, Harold, who lived 3 houses down, was particularly emotional. "Robert, I tried to visit you a dozen times over the past months," Harold said. "Diane always said you were sleeping or busy or didn't want company. I knew something was wrong." Other friends shared similar stories. Diane had systematically isolated Dad from his entire social network, telling everyone that he was too depressed or confused to have visitors, while simultaneously telling Dad that his friends had stopped caring about him. Patricia arrived with updates on the legal proceedings. "Diane has been formally charged with elder abuse in the first-degree theft, forgery, and fraud. The district attorney's office is taking this case very seriously." She also brought good news about the financial recovery. "We've managed to freeze all the fraudulent credit card accounts and begin the process of recovering the stolen money. The cabin sale has been canceled, and Diane's name will be removed from the deed." But the most important development was Dad's emotional recovery. As his mind cleared, his personality returned to the warm, loving father Tyler and I remembered. He asked about our jobs, our lives, our plans for the future. He wanted to know everything he'd missed during the months when Diane had been controlling his access to information. "I miss so much," he said sadly. "Mayra, you mentioned you were promoted to marketing director, but I don't remember congratulating you. Tyler, didn't you say something about coaching the school's debate team?" We spent the evening catching up on all the conversations we should have been having over the past year. Dad was amazed to learn about Tyler's success with his students and my new responsibilities at work. He'd been told that we were both struggling and constantly asking him for money, when in reality, we'd both been doing well and simply wanting to maintain our relationship with him. As visiting hours ended, Dad grabbed both our hands. "I have so much to make up for," he said. "Not just the time we lost, but the way I treated you. Even if I was being manipulated, I should have trusted my instincts about my own children." "Dad, we have plenty of time to rebuild," I assured him. "The important thing is that you're safe now, and we're going to make sure nothing like this ever happens again." Tyler nodded firmly. "And we're going to make sure the cabin stays in the family forever, just like Mom wanted." Dad smiled for the first time in what felt like years. "Your mother would be proud of how you fought for me, even when I couldn't fight for myself." As Tyler and I left the hospital that night, we both felt a mixture of exhaustion and hope. The legal process would take months to fully resolve, and Dad would need time to recover emotionally from what he'd endured. But we had our father back, and that was worth everything. 6 months later, I stood on the deck of our family cabin watching Dad teach my 8-year-old nephew Connor how to cast a fishing line into the crystal clear lake. The spring afternoon was perfect with wildflowers blooming along the shoreline and the mountains providing a majestic backdrop that never got old. "Grandpa Robert, I think I felt a fish," Connor shouted excitedly, his fishing rod bending slightly. "Easy now, buddy." Dad laughed, his voice strong and clear. "Let him play with it a little before you try to reel him in." It was hard to believe this was the same man who'd been confused and withdrawn just months ago. Dad had made a complete recovery once Diane's medications cleared his system. More than that, he seemed healthier and happier than he'd been in years. Tyler walked out onto the deck carrying a tray of sandwiches and cold drinks. His wife Jennifer and their 2 kids had driven up from Colorado Springs for the weekend, making this our first big family gathering at the cabin since everything happened. "Any luck out there?" Tyler called to Connor. "I've got a big one," Connor yelled back, though his fishing line was clearly empty. Dad winked at us. "He's got the enthusiasm down. The technique will come later." The legal resolution had been everything Patricia had promised. Diane pleaded guilty to all charges and was sentenced to 3 years in state prison, plus full restitution of the money she'd stolen. The judge had been particularly harsh in her sentencing, noting that elder abuse cases involving systematic manipulation and drugging represented some of the most serious crimes against vulnerable adults. Dad had recovered 90% of his stolen money, and the fraudulent credit cards had been eliminated entirely. More importantly, the cabin deed had been legally corrected, with Dad establishing a formal trust that ensured the property would belong to Tyler and me, and eventually our children. But perhaps the most surprising development had been Jessica's transformation. Diane's daughter had been horrified to learn the extent of her mother's crimes and had actually testified for the prosecution. She'd known something was wrong, but had been afraid to speak up, intimidated by her mother's aggressive personality. I kept telling myself that maybe Mr. Sullivan really had agreed to those things, Jessica had explained during one of our conversations. But deep down, I knew my mom was lying. I should have said something sooner. Dad had surprised everyone by maintaining a relationship with Jessica, recognizing that she was as much a victim of Diane's manipulation as he was. She'd been raised by a mother who taught her that deception and theft were acceptable ways to get ahead in life. "Jessica is a good person who was taught bad lessons," Dad had explained to us. "She's choosing to learn better lessons now, and that takes courage." Today, Jessica was working as a receptionist at a veterinary clinic in Boulder and taking night classes to become a veterinary technician. She stopped by occasionally to check on Dad and had even helped him set up a new computer system for managing his finances. The psychological recovery had taken longer than the physical recovery, but Dad had worked with a counselor who specialized in trauma from elder abuse. Dr. Sarah Chen had helped him process the guilt and confusion that victims often experience. Many people don't realize that elder abuse victims often blame themselves. Dr. Chen had explained to Tyler and me, they feel like they should have been smart enough or strong enough to recognize what was happening. Your father needed to learn that being trusting and loving doesn't make someone weak or foolish. Dad had also made significant changes to protect himself in the future. He'd appointed Tyler as his backup decision-maker for financial matters and had established a system where any major financial decisions required approval from both Tyler and me. He'd also joined a senior community center where he'd made new friends and developed a support network outside of romantic relationships. "I'm not planning to swear off companionship forever," Dad had told us. "But next time, if there is a next time, I'll take things much more slowly, and I'll make sure anyone I'm serious about is someone you kids approve of too." The cabin had become the center of our renewed family life. Dad had moved out of the house he'd shared with Diane, too many bad memories, and had bought a smaller place in a senior-friendly community in Boulder. But almost every weekend he drove up to the mountains to spend time at the cabin, often bringing his new friends from the community center. Today was special because it marked exactly 6 months since Dad's hospitalization, and we'd decided to make it an official family celebration. Tyler's kids were exploring the hiking trails Jennifer was reading on the deck, and Dad was in his element teaching the next generation how to fish. "Mayra, come over here," Dad called. I want to show you something." I walked over to where he and Connor were standing by the lake's edge. "You see that big pine tree over there, the one that's taller than all the others?" Dad pointed across the water. "That's where I proposed to your mother 35 years ago," he said softly. I was so nervous I almost dropped the ring in the lake. Connor looked up with wide eyes. "What would have happened if you dropped it?" Dad chuckled. "I guess I would have had to learn how to dive really fast." He put his arm around my shoulders. "You know, your mother always said that cabin would be the place where our family stories would be passed down through generations. She'd be so happy to see Connor here, learning to fish in the same spot where I taught you and Tyler." Later that evening, as we sat around the cabin's fireplace roasting marshmallows and sharing stories, Dad stood up to make a speech. "I want to say something to all of you." He began, his voice emotional but strong. "6 months ago, I almost lost everything that matters: my relationship with my children, my health, my independence, and this beautiful place that connects us to Mom's memory." He looked directly at Tyler and me. "You two saved my life, not just physically, but in every way that counts. You could have given up on me when I said those terrible things to you. You could have decided I wasn't worth fighting for. But you never stopped believing that your real father was still in there somewhere." Tyler wiped his eyes. "Dad, you would have done the same thing for us." "I hope so, son. I hope I raised you with enough love and stubbornness to fight for family even when it's hard." Dad continued, "I've learned that family isn't just about blood or marriage certificates. It's about the people who refuse to give up on you, who see the best in you, even when you can't see it in yourself, and who are willing to fight for what's right, even when the odds are against them." He raised his coffee mug in a toast to second chances, to fighting for what matters, and to the truth that real love always finds a way to win in the end. As we all raised our mugs in response, I thought about how much had changed since that horrible Christmas morning when I'd been turned away from Dad's door. The pain and betrayal we'd experienced had been real, but it had also revealed the strength of our family bonds and our capacity to overcome even the most sophisticated manipulation. Connor tugged on my sleeve. "Aunt Mayra, Grandpa Robert says you're the one who figured out what the bad lady was doing. How did you know?" I thought about his question carefully, wanting to give him an answer he could understand, but that was also true. Sometimes Connor, people we love start acting differently, and it's not really their fault. They might be sick or confused, or someone might be lying to them. But if you really know someone's heart, you can tell when something isn't right. And when that happens, you don't give up. You keep loving them and keep trying to help them, even when it's really hard. Connor nodded solemnly, then brightened. "Like when my friend Marcus was being mean to everyone, but it turned out he was just sad because his parents were getting divorced." "Exactly like that," I said, impressed by his understanding. "You knew Marcus was really a good kid even when he was acting bad." As the evening wound down and Tyler's family prepared for the drive back to Colorado Springs, Dad pulled me aside for a private conversation. "Mayra, I need to ask you something. Do you remember that phone call when I demanded your cabin key? You said something to me, then something that I can't stop thinking about." I smiled. "I remember. I told you the cabin was never legally yours to give away." "Those weren't the only words, though. You said something else, something that reached me even through all the confusion I was feeling." I thought back to that moment, to the anger and determination I'd felt. I said, "Dad, I love you and I'm coming for you." Dad's eyes filled with tears. Those were the 6 words that changed everything. Even drugged and manipulated, some part of me heard that and knew it was true. I might not have remembered our conversations or understood what was happening to me, but I never forgot that my daughter said she loved me and wasn't giving up. He hugged me tightly. "Thank you for coming for me, sweetheart. Thank you for not letting me disappear." As I drove back to Denver that night, I reflected on everything our family had been through and overcome. The experience had taught me that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice you make every day, especially when circumstances make that choice difficult. Diane had tried to erase our family's history and replace it with her own version of events. She'd used drugs, lies, manipulation, and isolation to control Dad and steal from him. But she'd underestimated the power of genuine family bonds and the determination of children who refused to abandon their parent. Now, 6 months later, Dad was healthier and happier than he'd been in years. Our family was closer than ever, bonded by the experience of fighting for each other. The cabin remained in our family just as Mom had wanted, ready to welcome future generations of fishing lessons and campfire stories. Most importantly, we'd learned that sometimes protecting the people you love requires courage, persistence, and a willingness to fight for the truth, even when everyone around you is telling you to give up. I thought about families watching this story who might be facing similar situations, elderly parents acting strangely sudden changes in behavior or financial decisions, isolation from family members. I wanted them to know that trust your instincts. If something doesn't feel right, investigate. Don't let anyone convince you that your concerns aren't valid. And never ever give up on someone you love even when they seem to have given up on you. Have you ever had to fight for a family member who couldn't fight for themselves? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who's facing a similar situation. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more real-life stories about family resilience and the power of never giving up on the people who matter most. And don't forget to share this with someone who might need to hear that love really can overcome even the most difficult circumstances. Thank you for being part of our community, and remember that your family's story matters too.